Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Mubarak. May Allah bless all of you. May Allah reward you. And we ask that Allah Ta'ala accept our prayers, accept our Salatul Fajr, accept our fasting, accept our dua. May Allah fill all of your homes with light and with love and with liberation and with faith and with taqwa and with reverence for God. This morning, inshallah, we are going to continue benefiting from the words of the great sage Maulana Rumi, and the great Imam, the great reviver of the deen, Imam Rumi. Yesterday, we entered the section on why we must die. But what I'd like you to do, inshallah, before we begin, is take a moment, hopefully you have a pen, hopefully you have a piece of paper nearby. Just take a moment and write down, if you would, either on your phone or on a piece of paper with a pen. Just write down the differences between the body and the spirit. The differences between your body and the spirit, which is who you truly are, right? So just take a moment to do that, inshallah, before we get in to today's lesson. For those of you who just joined us, we're taking just a moment before we begin to do something a bit interactive. I'd like you to write down on a piece of paper or in your phone, whatever writing utensil works best for you. The differences between your body and the spirit, which is your essence. And if you are aware of any, you can write down some similarities. If anyone has questions about this exercise, feel free to ask. Are you ready? Okay. All right, Bismillah. So would anyone like to share some of their answers? You can feel free to unmute yourself by clicking the red microphone icon. If you have background noise, like if it's noisy where you are, then you can just type in one of your answers or two of your answers, whatever's easiest for you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So the awareness, I'm sorry for just being, just jumping in the answer, not introducing,
No.
but the awareness.
You can share your name.
Mujahid.
Mujahid, yes.
I'm here with my wife, Zainab. Anyway, so.
Okay, it was Mujahid Bai from Fajr, right?
No, New York.
Okay, wonderful, welcome.
Thank you. So the spirit would be, I would say, is awareness, and the body is something that I'm aware of.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the body is an object of your awareness. So Mujahid is saying that one difference is that the spirit is awareness, is complete awareness, and the body is the object of is an object of his awareness. Okay, thank you. And Yasser typed in, the body is fed by food, and the spirit is fed by prayer. Okay. And Karen wrote, the difference of body is tangible. Similarities must be cleansed, must be nurtured. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? What are the differences or similarities? What's the overlap between the body and the spirit?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam. Yeah, please just tell us your name and where you are. And
Danish here from New Jersey.
all right, Brother Danish. Yeah, we visited you yesterday at the store.
Yeah, I
Hello.
so me and my wife, we got some things here. Body, we said decays, spirit does not.
Yeah, okay.
And body has, age, it ages, but spirit does not age.
Yeah.
Body needs to eat food. Spirit does not need any food. Body is limited to physical RAM. Spirit does not. And then the one similarity that we got was body and spirit both grow in a good way or a bad way.
MashaAllah. Okay, very good. MashaAllah. So yeah, thank you. So you shared a lot of what I was thinking. Yeah, and what I've learned. Thank you very much.
Allah barik fi.
Yeah, well, Allah yubarak fikum. Thank you for your service to the community. And let's see here what we have. Bismillah, Saber wrote, the body is temporary, whereas the spirit is eternal. That's correct, yes. Sohail Abai wrote, the body is physical, spirit cannot be seen. The body is there as a means to get to our spirit, our destiny, our final goal. The body is worldly, the spirit is eternal. MashaAllah. Very, thank you for sharing that. Sharon asks, can the spirit live without the body? But the body cannot live without the spirit. Correct. Yeah, well, actually, the spirit lives before the body exists, right? You have a spirit before you are born into this world. The thing is that for the vast majority of human beings, we forget. We forget. But living Islam and living Islam deeply enables us to remember who we were and where we were and before our birth. And Imam Rumi speaks about this actually, mashallah. And let's see, Asra wrote, the body grows old and the spirit doesn't. That's right, correct, thank you. Ustada Alima writes, the body is the vessel, the cage that contains the spirit. Yeah, that's an interesting point. The way that some of the scholars, that's what you're saying has a lot of truth to it. And I think for a lot of people that's true. But the goal is that the body be a vehicle that the spirit rides, as opposed to a cage in which it is contained. And so, yes, there's truth in what you're saying for a lot of people. But again, the goal is that the body be a vehicle, not a vessel. And if you all can imagine the difference between, a bird in a cage that's locked up in a cage versus a bird that's perched on top of the cage, right? And someone wrote privately, the spirit is celestial, nurtured by Allah's breath, in quotes, and the body is earthly, organic. That's correct, yeah. Thank you. Asad wrote, You are what you eat. Consuming haram food, food income causes spiritual diseases. That's correct. Khadija wrote, the body is the outer covering of the spirit. The spirit is the essence of who we truly are. Yeah, interesting. That's an interesting point. So the body is, as Rumi said, it's the shadow of the shadow of the shadow of the spirit. And so the body is actually a physical expression of the attributes of your spirit. It's really interesting. And you have, and he says the shadow of the shadow of the shadow, because you have other bodies between the spirit and the physical body. They're ethereal bodies and other bodies. So again, the goal is for the body to take on to be dyed. Like when you dye a garment in a color, the goal is for the body to become dyed with the color of the spirit. And the color of the spirit is light. The spirit is colorless. Or you could say it another way, that the color of the spirit are the attributes of Allah, are the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about this yesterday. Ustad Alima adds, dhikr is the food and light increase of the spirit. MashaAllah. Thank you. And yeah, dhikr is the food of the spirit, just like dhikr is the food of the angels, right? That's what sustains the angels. That's what they find joy in. Just like many of us will find delight in a delicious meal cooked with love. You imagine your favorite meal cooked by someone who really, really loves you and someone who really loves Allah. Yeah, that's the same. Actually, the spirit, when the spirit does dhikr, or when you do dhikr, the spirit experiences even more delight than you receive in such an instance. Karen writes again that both are gifts of Allah. Correct. The body is a gift of Allah. Again, we do not hate our bodies. We actually should love and cherish and be thankful for our bodies. Our goal, though, is to, again, make the spirit the ruler of the body. Your spirit should be the king or the queen of the body. And for too many human beings, it's the body that rules everything. It's the body that rules the intellect. It's the body that rules, their choices. And Ramadan, the message of Ramadan is you are not your body. You are not just your body, rather, but you are so much more. And Allah Ta'ala demonstrates to us through fasting that you can be happy. You can be strong. You can live without feeding yourself for several hours. And some people even get to the point, again, depending on your level of health and what kind of food you eat. I mean, there's a whole, as I kind of alluded to this yesterday, when the Prophet ﷺ ate, when traditional Muslim and traditional Chinese and traditional Ayurvedic practitioners, when they eat, their idea of a balanced meal is a meal that is balanced in the temperaments. And so many of us don't eat like that, right? We eat based on our cultures or we eat based on convenience. And when I say culture, I mean even American culture. Many of us, we eat based on, what's popular in American culture. But if we did eat based on the energy of the temperaments, I think a lot of us would find that, fasting would not be as difficult. In fact, the easiest fasts I've ever had are those fasts where I eat based on the temperaments, as opposed to just eating whatever looks delicious from the grocery store. That's halal, right? Tariq wrote, Salam, walaikum salam. Spirit is free will and has no limits, and the body is constrained with finite limits. That's right. Yeah. overlap. Both body and spirit are guided by the free will to do good versus evil. Yes, the good. Thank you, Rob. The spirit is pure consciousness, where the body is a material object reflecting consciousness. Yeah, you're right. But there's a underlying it. The point you made, Rob, is another point that the body is there to execute, right, the consciousness, or to express that consciousness of the spirit, because the spirit cannot touch an apple. The spirit cannot bite into a drumstick. The spirit can't hug your child. Right? The spirit can't do any of that. Right? So the body allows the spirit to interact with this physical world. Otherwise, you couldn't. You would just be a disembodied spirit, as our brother said earlier. Mujahid said, aware of this world, right? Aware of the world, observing, but not able to communicate, not able to interact. And so it is my tongue and my lips and my oral cavity and my throat that allow me to articulate what my spirit wants you to hear, from me, right? What I want to share with you, and vice versa. It is your bodies that allow your spirits to communicate with me, right? Tazyin writes, the spirit is eternal and gives the body life, makes it alive. That's it. Yeah, you're right. I'm sure we have a lot of people from the 313 here. Sister Tazyin, give my salams to Ismail. Chaplain Kamal writes, are we purifying the body through fasting to gain access to our spirit expressed through it? Yeah, I don't know why you're asking me. Yeah, I think you know better than me, Kamal. So yes, the answer is yes. We are purifying the body. Its attachments, right? Its attachments to food, to drink, to its carnal desires, so that the light of the spirit can better shine through it, so that we can more identify, completely identify with the spirit. And that's a big deal with fasting. And it's like, those of you who jog or run marathons, you know that when you're running, there's a certain point. I think it's different for different runners, but maybe it's at the 10th mile, maybe it's at the halfway point. You hit a wall, right? You hit a wall where you just feel like dying. You feel like you can't go any further. And subhanAllah, if you just push through, right, that's sabr. Right? If you have sabr, if you persevere through that wall, on the other side of that wall is the zone, right? They call it the zone. You catch a new wind, runners say, and that new wind, running, becomes effortless. It's as if the runners say, it's like you are not running anymore. It's almost as if your body's not making any effort to run, but it's being moved, right? It's being moved. And fasting is very similar. For many of us, at a certain point, you hit a wall where it's just hard, right? You're not getting enough sleep. The children are not, their sleep patterns off, maybe, right? You're trying to, read and study the Quran, and, and you're working, and you're, turning in, your projects and meeting deadlines, and you have meetings with your teams and your managers or your employees, and it's just tough, right? But if you persevere, inshallah, on the other side of that is this bliss. You get into this zone, And that's why am I bringing this up? Because that zone is where the spirit takes over. And your whole life can be like that. Your whole life can be like that, where the spirit takes over and your life becomes effortless. Like that's how my teachers live. You know, my teachers live in that zone. And that's why, and like Tahir Bhai, he was telling, you know, he and I were talking about this a few months ago, how, you know, one of our teachers, he's just not phased. He's always in this state of serenity, no matter what happens, no matter what, you know, may appear to be turbulent or challenging around him. He's just in this state of tranquility and treating everyone with kindness and respect and, you know, and compassion. And so he lives in that zone, right? He lives in that zone. And so that's what happens when you and I connect to the spirit more deeply. Tazeen adds, body descends into earth and spirit ascends into the heavens, inshallah. Yes, absolutely. Someone asked, do you consider the nafs as part of the spirit or body or its own entity? So I'm not going to tell you what I think or what I consider. I'm only sharing with you what I've read, what I've learned from my teachers. And yes, some of what I've experienced in my own journey, my own journey to Allah in Islam on the earth. There is this overlap. There is a kind of overlap, and it's really, the scholars say that it's really one light, right? That the nafs, the spirit, the intellect, the heart, they're all really one. But what happens is when the spirit gets intermixed with the flesh, then that's when the nafs emerges. So it's not a necessarily a separate entity, but it's a reality that comes when now the spirit has to negotiate this other layer, this filter, this vehicle that, and you see babies, it's, you know, it's amazing. If you're ever around newborn babies in their first 3 to 4 months, literally their spirits are getting used to their bodies, right? They move and they're not in control. You can literally see their spirits, you know, settling in to the body, right? Learning how to move this thing, right? Like what is this, right? And then at some point they discover, oh, that's a foot. I can put it in my mouth, right? SubhanAllah. So the nafs and the intellect and the heart, according to many scholars of Islamic spirituality, are actually just expressions of the spirit in its attempt to engage this physical reality, right? And it's and then the body is an independent reality, right? And the body itself is, you know, wants what the spirit has. So that's where the problem comes for a lot of people. All the things that you all have mentioned about the spirit, the body wants to be celestial, right? All right, and either it wants to get there through the spiritual path, or it wants to get there in a rocket that's going into outer space, but it wants to get up into the heavens. The body wants to be eternal. And that's why so many people try to seek immortality, either through naming a lot of buildings after them, right? Or writing books, or, you know, working very hard to get awards and to be remembered, right? The people want to be remembered, or they have children, right? They they make attempts at some form of immortality so that they can have some existence beyond the death of the body. The body wants to be ageless, right? The body wants to stay young forever. That's the spirit. That is the spirit. The spirit does not age, right? The spirit, and now you see, I hope this is not too controversial, but this whole movement of gender fluidity and trans gender politics, and this again is the body seeking to be like the spirit, because the spirit doesn't have a gender. The spirit is neither male nor female. And so now people, for different reasons, I don't want to get into all I know it's very complicated, and I don't want to make light of it at all. But again, you have this attempt by the body to be like the spirit. And people are willing to pay lots of money themselves, or to have taxpayers pay lots of money to for these sex change operations. And people want to make many changes in society to accommodate that. So I hope that point is clear. So the body wants the peace, the serenity, wants the bliss, wants the euphoria that the spirit enjoys. Now, what happens is the body tends to look for shortcuts to that. It might be, like I said yesterday, through drugs. It might be through money. It might be through some addiction, right? It might be through a number of ways. It might be through religion, right? Because you can practice religion without learning about spirituality. So thank you for that. I just wanted to hear from you and add an interactive element to what we're doing, inshallah ta'ala. And with that, we're going to get into our lesson, which is very deep and very important. Someone added, let's see. Okay, Rob wrote, it seems to me that Ramadan introduces a way of life that we need to learn to live daily. Absolutely. I mean, and really, Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, he lived like the way you're living now in Ramadan. And I'm assuming, you are, praying your 5 prayers and more on time, and you're praying Taraweeh at night, maybe for 20 minutes, maybe for 2 hours, depending on what your stamina, your ability is. You're giving charity, you're fasting. Prophet Muhammad, God bless him, grant him peace, that was his regular day. Not just in Ramadan, that was all year, right? All year long, and I'm not saying he fasted all year, right? We know that he did not fast all year, but there were times, months outside of Ramadan where our mother Aisha, Allah be pleased with her, said he would fast so much, we thought he would never stop. And there were times he would not fast that we thought he would never fast again. So, the Prophet said I was very balanced, very balanced. But yeah, this gives us a taste of how the prophets and how the righteous live, how the righteous live. And, may Allah reward all of you who are working on yourself so hard. This is really, I remember, again, I remember when I was a Christian, before I became Muslim, we used to wear these shirts called Lord's Gym. I don't know if anyone remembers that in the 90s. We had these t-shirts, these sweatshirts called Lord's Gym. And the whole idea was, that you were working out, that being a Christian was working on your soul, working on your ego, right? And so Ramadan is it's like being in the gym of the spirit, you know, because your ego is put through the ringer, right? You know, your nafs is, you're hungry during the day, and you're spending maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours at night, maybe more, 3-4 hours, right? Reading the Quran, standing, you know, and yeah, you know, and that, you know, when you could be doing other things that you usually do. What do you usually do? What do you usually do at night? Read books, watch TV, you know, chat on social media, you know, sleep. Those are things you're not doing that you're used to. And so it's a way of weaning the nafs. Now the mistake is after Ramadan to go back. Right? That's the mistake. That after you've made all this progress in Ramadan, like you've gone forward, not 30 steps, not 30 miles. You've gone forward with Ramadan a whole, more than a lifetime. Laylatul Qadr, right, is better than 1,000 months. So let's just say, you know, at the minimum, you have progressed on your spiritual path 83 plus years. Now, after Ramadan, you go back to your usual routine. It's like you've regressed, right? You go back to the old habits, you know, the old addictions, the old, you know, lack of awareness rather than awareness, right, Mujahid? Right, you know, so Ramadan brings you to deeper awareness. Asad wrote, sleep is the cousin of death. Yes, that's right. From the hadith of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, nafs, I think that's nas, I think he means nafs, but like how our souls leave our bodies when we sleep. I think he meant nafs. Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Thank you for those, mashallah. Thank you for sharing. It was so good to hear from all of you. And let's see what Molana has to say, what Rumi has to say today. So the section today is called Why Must We Die? Why must we die? Right? It could also be phrased another way. You know, why must we live? Why must we die? Bismillah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam. We begin in the name of God, the loving, the compassionate. May God bless and grant peace to our leader Muhammad and his family and his companions. وعلى سائر الأنبياء والمرسلين ساداتنا آدم ونوح وإبراهيم وموسى وعيسى بن مريم صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم أجمعين. And may peace and blessings be upon our leaders, Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus, the son of Mary, Abraham and all of the other prophets and messengers. May the peace of God and his blessings rest upon them all. Imam Rumi, God be merciful to him, said, a rejoinder to the simpleton who said, this world would be fine were it not for death, and worldly wealth would be fine if it did not come to an end, and other absurdities of this kind. And other absurdities of the kind. So again, this is a rebuttal. This is a response to the simpleton, right, to the foolish person who said, this world would be fine were it not for death. And worldly wealth would be fine if it did not come to an end. And other absurdities, right? End quote. And then Imam Rumi says, and other absurdities of the kind. He calls these absurdities. And the person who says such things, he calls them a simpleton, right? Someone who's not thinking deeply and wisely. He goes on to say, that man used to say, and he quotes, this world would be fine if only death's foot were not planted in it. Said another, if there were no death at all, the world would be worthless and tangled up. A stack piled up in an empty field, abandoned, neglected, and unthreshed. You've imagined as life what is really death. Sown your seed in salty, barren soil. Truly, false reason views things inside out. It sees life as death, you weak-minded man. End quote. Now Rumi speaks. So this was a conversation between two people, right? The first guy, the first man is saying, you know, this wouldn't be too bad if it wasn't that we have to die. And the other guy says, if we didn't die, you know, then this world wouldn't, life wouldn't, life wouldn't have any meaning. If we didn't die here, life wouldn't have any meaning. What you imagine to be life, meaning eternal life here in the physical realm, is actually death. And if you're not aware, people like, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk now, Elon Musk has kind of joined the bandwagon, even though a few years ago he was speaking very prophetically in terms of warning us about the dangers of integrating artificial intelligence into biological organisms like human beings. But really there's this push now to do whatever we can, you know, to help human beings who can afford it, to preserve their consciousness and to live on the earth, you know, as long as they can. So, you know, cryonically embalmed, right? You know, freeze your DNA so that at some point when they figure it out, they can clone you and transfer your consciousness to new bodies, right? This is what we think we can now sooner or later have the technology to do. The intention is there at the very least, right? People don't want to die. Again, this is the body wanting to have the attribute of the spirit. People want paradise here on earth. They want a physical paradise. They don't want the paradise of knowledge of God, right? Which is really the only true paradise you can have on earth. It's what the scholars call Jannatul Irfan. It's the garden of gnosis of God. And that knowledge of God, gnosis or Irfan, is a knowledge of God that is direct. It doesn't come through studying a book or going to a class or taking a course. It is a knowledge of Allah, of the divine, that Allah inspires your heart with directly, of His reality, of His names, of His attributes, of His grace, His limitless grace, of His limitless majesty and power. And that knowledge transforms everything. You don't see the world the same. It literally transforms the world you live in. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not being poetic. You're living in a different world. You're living in the same world, but you see it through a different. It's as if before you get this, you entered into this garden of knowledge of God. You were wearing these dark shades, but the dark shades were on you since the time you were born. It's like the cave metaphor. Those of you who are familiar with Plato's cave metaphor. And then when Allah gives you this knowledge, the dark glasses are removed and you see actually the world's not all gray, you know, and you start to see all these brilliant colors. It's the same world, but it's a different world, is my point, right? That knowledge transforms not just what you see, but what you experience, what you hear, and how you relate to people, and how you interpret how they are engaging you, right? It's amazing, right? And so that's the only paradise you can have on this earth, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he teaches us how to bring paradise to earth through circles of remembrance of God. And there are other hadith that mention, you know, whoever does this, they will have a meadow from the meadows of the garden. That's how you bring paradise to earth, right? Not through technology. Not through technology, right? And you know, Mark Zuckerberg and you know, people like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk they're very intelligent people, right? But they're intelligent people, but their understanding of the body and the soul and the spirit has problems, and because of that, they think that human beings, it's in the best interest of human beings to, you know, become integrated with computers or with the cloud, right? Or, you know, to live a life on Mars, for example, right? After we've ruined this planet, right? That's our plan B, to live on Mars in case this planet gets destroyed. So may Allah Ta'ala help us. Then now Rumi speaks. He says, God shows us all things. God, show us all things as they really are in this abode where illusion is rife. So this is actually a prayer that Prophet Muhammad used to make. So Rumi, when you read the Masnawi, especially the Masnawi, and his other works as well, but especially the Masnawi, he is constantly interspersing ayat from the Quran without telling you it's an ayah from the Quran, as we've already seen over the past few days. Or in this case, he'll share a saying of the Prophet ﷺ without saying Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, because again, it's a part of him. It's a part of him. He says, God, show us all things as they really are. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to make a prayer, Allahumma arina al-ashya kama hiya. Oh God, through all of your names, show us things as they truly are. Show us things as they truly are. For many people, for most people in the world, they're not seeing things. They're not seeing life as it really is. We, generally, human beings, we see the world through our limited knowledge. Our experiences, usually the experiences in our first 18 years of life, our trauma, our pain, our suffering, through our parents, our guardians, through our cultural biases and prejudices, and all of those are through our gender, through our political affiliations and loyalties, and again, through the choices we make and the level at which our soul is at, whether it's at the lower levels, nafs al-amara, the soul, and there's 7 levels of the soul that are mentioned in the Quran. The soul that commands to evil. Then above that is the soul that blames and criticizes, the criticizing soul. It criticizes others and it criticizes itself. And then there's the soul that is inspired. Then above that is the soul that is serene. Then above that is the soul that finally accepts God as God. I was reading about this last night from Baal Muhayyiddin. that Iman, true faith, is to finally accept Allah as Allah and not project our ideas of who God should be and how God should be and what God should be and what God should do for me onto God, but to accept Allah as Allah. Ya ayyuhatu nafs mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiya. O soul that's serene, return to your master, pleased with God and God pleased with you. Right. And then above that is the soul that God is pleased with. And then finally there's what is called the paradisical soul, the soul that enters the garden. Right. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. So enter among my devoted servants, enter my paradise. Again, that's not only referring to the paradise in the next life, right? Our scholars, spiritual scholars, say that entering into that garden can happen here through your consciousness and to live in that, right? To live in that. And so we see the world through our nafs. Most of us, we see the world through our nafs. Someone says something to you, innocent, but because of, your past experiences, it may be a trigger that causes you to interpret as a microaggression, or you take offense to it, or your husband or your wife say something to you that, that just brings out all kinds of things, and we live like this, and so much pain and suffering and misunderstanding comes from living life this way. So this is a prayer we should be making regularly. This is a prayer I want each and every one of you to make a part of your daily supplications this Ramadan and after it. Oh God, oh Allah, show me things as they truly are. Allahumma arinil ashya kama hiya. Oh Allah, show me things as they really are. You want to see things not through your eyes, but you want to see things through the light of Allah. And when Allah shines His light on the matters for you, you see the thing from all angles, not just your angle and not just another person's angle, but when Allah's light illuminates your life, your world, and really what's happening is Allah's light illuminates your heart, you're able to see something from 360 degrees, from all what the Native Americans call the 7 directions, right? From all the 7 directions, in front of it, behind it, to its right, to its left, above it, below, and then inside, its inner reality, right? That's what happens when you see with the light of Allah. You see everything in life, your children, your spouse, your work, your projects. You see all of them through the 7 directions. And that's a beautiful way to live. It saves you a lot of headache and a lot of heartache. May Allah give us success. God, show us all things as they really are in this abode where illusion is rife. No dead person grieves on his death's account. La ilaha illallah. Listen. No dead person grieves on his death's account. When a person dies, and again, Rumi is one of these people who's seeing things from all 7 directions. Right? He's speaking not from books he's read, he's speaking from his own spiritual experience, his spiritual journeying. He's giving us information that is only privy to people who Allah has inspired. He's telling us dead people, people who die physically, who transition to the barzakh, to the next intermediate world, that world between this world and between the resurrection of our bodies and souls on Judgment Day. He said, dead people aren't sorry that they left here. You know, people who die, they are not sorry that they're not here anymore. Now, while we're crying and we're grieving out of separation, you know, they have a, when you die, there's a freedom you feel. Like this body is so heavy compared to when you live without it. You know, and it's like wearing armor. Can you imagine wearing armor? You're every day, like every morning you wake up, you have to put on armor. When you go to work, right? When you go to the park, when you take your children or your grandchildren to the playground, when you go to the bathroom, you're wearing this heavy armor. And you have to do that every day. How do you feel at the end of the day when you take off the armor? Now, some of us literally are wearing armor, right? It's not physical. It's not metal. We're wearing emotional armor because we've been hurt so many times. We've been disappointed so many times. We've been abused so many times. We don't want to be hurt. But imagine that feeling of actually taking off a suit of armor at the end of a long day. That is how the human being, the human soul feels when it dies. Like relief, really. This is no exaggeration. There's no metaphor here. That's how the human soul feels. No dead person grieves on his death's account. What he regrets, what she regrets, is having too little in store. That's the only regret. Not leaving. It's not taking enough provision with you for the journey. And the provision is what? Sound, noble intentions and righteous deeds. That's the provision. That's the only regret the soul has, not leaving this plane, right? Actually, the soul's relieved. The dead person is relieved. Yet he's fallen from a pit out into the open, amidst fortune, pleasure, and relaxation. From this abode of mourning, he's talking about this earth, this worldly life. This is an abode of mourning. This narrow veil, he's been transported to the great outdoors. A seat of truth, not a palace of falsehood. Choice wine, right? Not being drunk with buttermilk. My grandmother used to have buttermilk in the refrigerator all the time. When I was younger, I used to dislike it, but now I developed a taste for sour things, right? So wine, in the next life, in the hereafter, there's wine that you can drink, right? But that doesn't intoxicate. Whereas, here he's talking about fermented buttermilk and getting intoxicated from buttermilk. The seat of truth with God, now his companion. He's escaped this water, the fire temple's earth. If you've not led the illuminative life, there's a moment or two left. Die like a man. That's how he ends it. If you've not led the illuminative life, if you've not led a life of spiritual enlightenment, of spiritual awareness, he said, there's a moment or two left. All you have is a moment or two left. Die like a man. And when he says die like a man, our sisters should not take offense, right? What he's saying here is die with the quality of absolute, of the masculine principle of piercing through, of piercing through adversity. You could say die like a woman, right? And die like a true man, die like a true woman. Yeah. And he's not, again, not being poetic here. All you do have, all I have is a moment or two. I did this, some of you who've studied with me before, we've done this exercise where we look at a day of Allah. A day of Allah is how many years? 50,000 years, right? Allah says in the Quran, 50,000 of our years is one of the days of God. And if you were to live for 120 years, let's just say, for example, most people live around 60 to 70 years on average. Life expectancy here in the West, right? And also the Prophet ﷺ said his ummah, the age of his ummah is 60 to 70 years on average. But let's just say 120 years. Okay. How, if you were to take 50,000 years as a 24-hour period, what percentage of that, or what fraction of that would 120 years equal to? Anybody know? Anyone worked that out before? Anybody want to take a guess? You can put in the chat if you'd like as we close. Anybody, if 50,000 years was one day and you lived for 120 years, how much time would that be out of the day? And if you've done this with me before, then you can't answer because that's cheating. that would be cheating. Anybody? I don't see the answers yet. Oh no, it's longer than that. Akhtar wrote 17.36 seconds. It's longer than that. Anyone else? Yes. Okay. Very good. Yeah. So someone wrote me privately, 3 minutes. So it's actually under 3 minutes. It's a little over 2 minutes. So compared to a day with Allah, we're not even talking about comparing someone living 120 years, which is unlikely for most of us. Possible, but unlikely. There are people who live that long. But the most of us, we don't expect to live that long. You're talking about 2 minutes. And if we went by 60, 70 years, it's probably more like a little over a minute. So he's saying you only have, in the expanse of time, you only have about a minute or two to get this right, to live a life of contemplation, to live a life of service, to live a life of connection to Allah, of connection to nature, of connection to the righteous. You only have a minute or two. So get it right and die. So don't be afraid of death, but let your concern be to die as a true human being, a human being who's using their faculties, their God-given faculties. And so I'm just going to read this and we'll close without commentary. For the worldly minded, this is from Dr. Muhammad Isa Whaley, God have mercy on him. God preserve him, rather. God preserve him and protect him and benefit us through him. He says, for the worldly minded and for what the poet calls al-mughaffal, a heedless person or simpleton, this life may appear to be the be-all and end-all. The drawback is that neither possessions nor one's life here last for long. And that is just as well. For one thing, if all mankind and their possessions were to last forever, this world would be hopelessly cluttered with people and things. to an extent that is all too imaginable in today's world, but was inconceivable in medieval times. By the divine wisdom, this world and all it contains is transitory. What is the use of lamentation or of wishful thinking? We need and should pray to be enabled to see things as they truly are, not as we may wish them to be, or as their supposed rationalism leads the skeptic and the atheist to suppose. Maulana, that's the honorary term for Rumi, which means our master, our spiritual master, warns us that false reason views things inside out. So it is that what appears to be death is in reality life. The real life is that of the hereafter, as the Quran says in Surah 29, Ayah 64. وَإِنَّ دَارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَحَيَوَانٌ. The abode, the everlasting abode, the final abode, that is true life. Hayawan. So abiding in this world forever would by no means be best for us. And I would add, just as a side note, nor would it satisfy the spirit. Sheikh Salahuddin At-Tijani has a wonderful book about the spirit, where he says the spirit is absolute. The spirit has no limits. And only the one who is limitless will satisfy the spirit. Only Allah, only God will satisfy your spirit. He goes on to say, Dr. Whaley goes on to say, although the dead had to leave this world behind, the major regret for most is not their departure itself, but their awareness of having too little in store. In other words, having failed to make adequate preparation and provision for their journey to eternity by way of good deeds and beneficial knowledge. The concluding message from these lines brings us to a higher level. To find true life here and to be forever in the highest position possible in the hereafter, you must die to yourself. Die to yourself. Die to your ego. Die to your selfishness. Die to your self-centeredness. Die to your self-importance. In this present life, both the darker and the lighter side of existence are ultimately of greater value for those who resolve that duality. Subspecies eternatus, from the perspective of eternity, right? That was Latin, and the translation is, from the perspective of eternity, whatever happens is for the best, as divine providence decreed. Jalaluddin Rumi resolves and dispels dualities with a degree of clarity that is rarely found elsewhere. The above lines offer a salient example with their compelling final exhortation. If you've not led the illuminative life, there's a moment or two left. Die like a true human being. Alhamdulillah. So may Allah Ta'ala give us deaths like true human beings. Human beings, what's a true human being? A human being whose character is the Quran. It's that simple. A truly human being is a human being who's reflecting the names of God. Asma'ullah al-Husna. A true human being is a human being who has completely annihilated themselves in the light and the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family, right? Of Ali and Fatima and Hassan al-Hussein, right? That's what a true human being is. And with that, I'll just see if there are any questions. or comments. What do we have here? Okay. 3 minutes. Cave metaphor. Always found it interesting in the emphasis on the sense of hearing to help cave dweller into light, and how the Quran is a recitation. Bingo, you got it, my brother. And of course, the cave metaphor, those of you who are familiar with the cave metaphor, it's actually part of a larger metaphor, right? There are 3 elements to it. But we don't have time to talk about that. But it's really important, actually, especially for Western people, to understand that Platonic metaphor and how it relates to Tawheed. Because really, to the person who wrote that, it's really a commentary on Tawheed. That's really what the cave metaphor is getting at. It comes from an ancient Egyptian metaphor for the attributes of God. And that's really what Plato was trying to communicate, even though a lot of Western philosophers have taken it in a different direction. Anyway, someone wrote me privately, it might actually be slightly more than 3 minutes, 124 to 120 years, over 50,000 years, 24 hours, 60 minutes equals 3.456 minutes, 3 minutes, 27 seconds. Thank you. Very good. So he says it's 3 minutes, 27 seconds. Thank you very much for that correction. Salam, what is the name of the book by Sheikh Tijani? So it's a book, it's part of a series of books called Al-Kunuz Al-Ashara, the 10 treasures. And these are basically 10 books that make up this collection. It's an anthology of books. The first book is on the spirit, and it's almost 1,000 pages. No, I'm sorry. It's about 200 pages, yeah. And it's in Arabic. I don't think it's been translated. Sheikh Salahuddin At-Tijani, he's a living scholar. He's Egyptian. He's based in Egypt. He's a prolific writer. And he has a website that's, all of his books are available on. And if you read Arabic, that book is just incredible. He talks about the spirit. Like, I really haven't seen any modern traditional scholar speak about the spirit. He also talks about paradise, and he resolves a lot of issues about paradise and the hellfire and things for me that I always had questions about. And so again, if you read Arabic, I can find the link and share that with you. Hopefully, I used to teach that book when I was in Atlanta, actually, and it was a very amazing. It was an amazing class, mashallah, because he just opens people's eyes to who they are, and most, how many classes online are talking about the spirit? Islamic classes. SubhanAllah. Okay, you mentioned Sheikh that Hadrat Ali. I'm not. First of all, I'm not a Sheikh. I'm just your brother, really. I'm not being modest. I'm just telling it like it is. You mentioned that Hadrat Ali had said, "Die before you die." No, I didn't say Hadrat Ali radiallahu anhu said that. Die before you die. It is a saying. It is a saying from that's many of our scholars say. Some attribute it to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but of course it cannot be authenticated to him. He may have said it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Mutu qabla an tamutu," right? Die before you die, but we can't authenticate it to him. So I just take it as a Muslim proverb, as an Islamic proverb, a wisdom teaching, if you will, of our great sages. Die before you die, and it is true. You should die before you die, meaning die to the self before you die physically. If you die before the self, if you die to the self, then you will live in the spirit, right? That illuminative life that Rumi's talking about. Sister Karen, alhamdulillah, mashallah, I'm glad you are with us. Sister Zainab, Brother Mujahid, is this state of death, let's see here. Is this state of death, die before we die, a permanent state, or do we swing back and forth? So it could be a temporary state, but once you're established in that station, it's permanent. Right? So you may have these, I guess you could say you go through a mood where you have this feeling of dying to the self, But, you may indulge, the next day or the next month. But when it actually, when the nafs is completely subjugated, and that's what we're talking about. We're not really talking, this is a metaphor, everyone should realize. This is a metaphor. We're not talking about killing the nafs. You can't kill the nafs, right? You need the nafs. You need yourself. You need yourself. It's a hyperbole. It's mubalagha. The idea is that the nafs is completely compliant with the spirit now. The soul, the ego is in complete compliance with the spirit. That's what is meant by, killing the self. Right? But you need the self. And again, this is the beauty of the prophetic Muhammadan spirituality. We're not aiming to rid ourselves of our bodies or our egos, but rather to bring the body, to bring the ego into alignment with the spirit. That's what we're looking for. And that's what the spiritual guide helps you to do. One of the brothers asked me, isn't this guy, he was struggling with this idea of needing a spiritual guide, needing a murshid. Isn't it like having a pope, right? He asked me. And I said, no. And I'm saying to him, I don't know if he's listening. I don't see his name, but he may be with us. But, no, the pope is a religious leader. The pope in Catholic, doctrine is basically the incarnation of God on earth. And, the Pope is the sole authority, the ultimate authority for the Catholic Church. The spiritual guide is your coach, like I said, a midwife that is helping you. Anyone who wants to excel, like an Olympic athlete, needs a coach, right? And you're doing something much more challenging than trying to win a gold medal, right? And track and field, you want a gold medal in the hereafter, right? And so the spiritual guide is someone who's there to be a mirror for you. Yeah. When the best coach is what? The coach who, they were a champion when they were an athlete, and not only that, they've helped other athletes or they've helped other teams win championships. That's the coach that you want coaching you, right? And so the spiritual guide is someone who they've completed their spiritual journey, and it's evident from their character. Really, brothers and sisters, it comes down to character. It comes down to character, right? And it comes down to taqwa, to obedience, being in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So the spiritual guide is not there to be your pope. Mm-mm. They can't tell you, they can't make halal what's haram or make haram what's halal. They can't do that. They're a coach, they're a teacher, they're a mirror, they're a guide. They're taking you on this journey through uncharted territory, right? And as I said yesterday, everyone may not be ready for that, right? When you're ready for that, you'll be seeking it. But if you're like, I don't know if this is right for me, that means you're not ready for it. So don't create a conflict, an inner conflict or dilemma where there shouldn't be, right? As I said a few days ago, let the Quran be your spiritual guide. Inna hadha Quran yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. Allah says, indeed, this Quran, it guides. The Quran is a guide to that which is most straight, what's most upright. Let Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam be your guide. Let Salat ala Nabi be your guide, right? Find a righteous brother or sister that can hold you accountable, right? So don't stress over this. When it's time, inshallah, you'll know. Sister Ambreen says, please teach that class again. Inshallah, we'll see. There's a lot of classes that need to be taught, Maybe I might just do a special, like a taste, like a workshop. Brother, mashallah, assalamu alaikum. I find myself always with the checks and balances with this dunya. My deen keeps me in check. and try to attain the next level. Exactly. Yeah, that's the way to go. That's good. Alhamdulillah. Are the teachings from Atlanta on Tijani recorded? So Sheikh Salahuddin at Tijani's class, I don't think they were recorded. I'm sorry. You mentioned Atlanta, heard from Imam Yama that Habib Omar, Allah preserve him, said that the most concentration of awliya buried in Atlanta. I'm wondering why and how. Yeah, I from what I've heard from Habib Omar and Habib Ali, it's because of all the Africans that were brought here as slaves. Many of them were saints, during the European American slave trade. Many of them were the Mafa, the great tragedy, the African Holocaust, if you would like to call it. Many of these Africans, these Muslims, about 30% of them were Muslim, of the about 100 million Africans that went through that horrible tragedy. But it's a tragedy, nevertheless, that is within the plan of Allah Ta'ala. And without that tragedy, I wouldn't be here sitting in front of you right now, right? And but that's a whole nother conversation. But the reason why there's so many awliya there is because of the Africans who were brought there and what they went through. And many of them were descendants of the Prophet ﷺ. Many of them were scholars, many of them were saints, and many of them, even the ones who were not scholars, many of them, they endured unspeakable horrors. If I just shared for a minute some of the things that they went through, I don't think anyone here would have a dry eye. Just unspeakable. And whatever you've read in history books or whatever you've seen in Hollywood movies doesn't even come close to really what happened. What really happened during the 300 plus years of the European American slave trade, you can't put that in a movie. It would literally be a horror movie. Literally, I mean, really, unless it was done with kind of like Alfred Hitchcock kind of innuendo, right? Horror. It's horrible, monstrous, and they endured that with sabr. Their iman was not shaken. Their iman, in fact, the Africans who went through that came out with more iman. They went through trials that many people around the earth would leave faith. They came out with more faith. And not only that, they came out with forgiveness a lot of times. Forgiveness and grace. So, inshallah, that's what I've been told by the students of Habib Omar and Habib Ali, that's why there's so many. And not just Atlanta, it's actually the whole Southeast United States. And when you go there, if you go there, you can feel it. If you go to Georgia, you go to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, South Carolina, you can feel it, right? And you go, subhanAllah, yeah. It's a very special place, very special part of the country. Oh, how do we deal with the information overload in fear of missing out on lectures, books, Zoom meetings? Don't worry about it. Whatever you need, Allah will provide you. Trust me. Don't worry about missing out. Focus on reading Quran. Focus on studying. Focus on your health. Focus on taking care of your family. If you're working right now or looking for work, focus on earning your livelihood. And do what you can. Whatever you need to know, Allah Ta'ala will bring it to you. I've learned that in my life. And whatever you need to know, Allah will give it to you. Don't worry. So just take the class that don't take 5-10 different Zoom classes right now. Just take 1 or 2, whatever you have time for. And if there's something that's not in those classes that is to your benefit that you need for your own spiritual journey, trust me, Allah will bring it to you somehow. Maybe through another class, maybe through someone's social media post, or through an email, or through a book, or your mother or your friend might call you and say, hey, did you see this? Or did you? Don't worry. Allah, have taqwa of Allah. Wattaqullah wa yu'allimukum Allah. Have taqwa of Allah, obey Allah, and Allah will teach you. So don't worry, brother. Don't worry. You'll be fine. Tazeen asks, I'm sorry, can you mention the name of the book again? And Ismail says, wa alaikum salam. MashaAllah. Great. Alhamdulillah. I think you mentioned the book by Sheikh Salahuddin. It's called Al-Kunuz Al-Ashara. Al-Kunuz Al-Ashara. That's the 10 treasures. And if you just Google, Salahuddin Tijani and Al-Kunuz Al-Ashara in Arabic, but you have to type it in Arabic, you'll find his website. He has a Wikipedia page and everything. Okay. Thank you, Umreen, for sharing that on my behalf. Ameen. May Allah bless you and preserve you and your family. Barakallahu feekum for sharing with his brother Mujahid, Sister Zainab. Alhamdulillah. Subhanallah. Okay, someone sent me a private message. I'm an epidemiologist working on COVID and was assigned to Southeast data. You just gave me more meaning to my work. Jazakallah khair. Again, Allahu Akbar. Allah bless. Okay, good. You found it, Sister Tazeen. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And Amani, you said you sent me a private message. Okay. Maybe I missed it. Oh, okay, I see. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, barakallahu feekum, wa feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and your family. Ameen. And the same for you all of you. Can you please tell us the name of the different stages of the soul in Arabic? Okay, yeah, sure. And I guess we'll end with this, inshallah. So the first level is mentioned in Surah Yusuf. Right, Surah Yusuf, the 12th surah of the Quran. Allah says, وَمَا أُبَرِئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَعَمَّارَةَ بِالسُّوءِ. I do not, Allah says, quoting, some scholars say it was Prophet Yusuf who said it, Prophet Joseph. Some say it was Zulaykha, the lady of the house, of the wife of the governor, who said it. I do not declare my soul to be innocent. Indeed, the soul is frequently commanding to evil. That's the first level of the self. That's the lowest level. That's the bestial, demonic level of the soul. The second level of the soul is mentioned in Surah Al-Qiyamah, in the chapter of the day of standing. فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِيَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ. And Allah makes an oath by the day of standing, and then Allah makes an oath by the criticizing soul. Nafs al-lawwama. That's the second level. And just so I don't forget, there's a book on all of this called Degrees of the Soul by Sheikh Abdul Khalik Shibrawi, which is an amazing book. He's Egyptian like you, Amani. A great book. It's a quick read, but very deep. Right? It's a quick read, but it's a dense book, but easy to read, quick to read, but just, living it, it's a lifetime. It's called Degrees of the Soul. The third level of the soul is mentioned in Surah Ash-Shams, the chapter of the sun, and that's the inspired soul. Allah says, قَدْ وَالنَّفْسِ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And Allah makes an oath by the soul and what power fashioned it, and the power that fashioned it, and inspired it with knowledge of its corruption and knowledge of its reverence for God. That's the third level of the soul. The fourth level of the soul is mentioned in Surah Al-Fajr, the dawn surah. Ya ayyuhatu nafsul mutma'inna, which is the serene soul. And then right after that, Allah describes it, radiyatan, that's the fifth level of the soul that's pleased with Allah. Mardiya, the soul that's the sixth level. Mardiya, the nafs mardiya is the soul that God is pleased with. So you have nafs and mutma'inna, then nafs radiya, then nafs mardiya. And then lastly, you have the seventh and final level of the soul, when God says, so enter among my devoted servants, enter my garden. And that soul is so transcendent. Allah doesn't use an attribute to describe it in this particular instance. The scholars call it the pure soul, or the perfected soul, or the complete soul, right? I like to call it the paradisical soul. It's become, that soul has become heavenly, right? So, and those are the 7 levels, inshallah. Allah bless you all. Jazakallah. Okay, definitely I'll give you a call, inshallah. Allah bless you all. Keep Imam Suhaib Sultan in your prayers. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Oh Allah, we ask that you give us success to live, Ya Allah, in spiritual consciousness during this life, Ya Allah, and that death, Ya Allah, is a door for us, Ya Allah, to your Ridwan, Ya Rabbil Alameen, and your Ghufran, to your satisfaction and your forgiveness. Oh Allah, we ask that you complete for us our spiritual light, complete for us our lights before we die, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, we ask that you complete our lights before we die. We ask, oh Allah, that you bless our families, that you bless our wealth, that you bless our health, that you bless our faith, that you increase us in knowledge, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask that you bless us in these days of Ramadan, these nights of Ramadan. Oh Allah, give us energy, give us strength, give us stamina, give us desire to please you, Ya Allah, and to serve your creatures, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Oh Allah, we pray for the health of Imam Suhaib Sultan and the well-being of his family, Ya Allah. Surround them with love and support, Ya Allah, and well-being. And we pray for all of those we pray for the healing of our sick and mercy upon our dead, and the freeing of those who have been wrongfully imprisoned, Ya Rabbal Alameen, and the alleviating of the suffering of those who are suffering, Ya Rabbal Alameen. اللهم اغفر للمسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات. سبحان ربك. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.